Have you ever thought about common ancestor Pokémon? It's an interesting idea, since just like real-life biology, every single species of Pokémon shares genetic similarity. It's just a question of how back you go to find that common ancestor. A while back, I found this version of a Pokémon Tree of Life, showing how close or far certain species of Pokémon are from one another. While it's just fan-made and I'm not a geneticist, I found it to be quite interesting. And it got me thinking, what if I took two Pokemon that are close enough on this tree but not too close, and I designed a common ancestor for both of them, meaning the Pokemon that these two Pokemon evolved from thousands or millions of years ago, just like real life. I'll showcase the art I came up with, and explain how this common ancestor gave rise to the two modern species that we know now. First, we need to define some terms and ideas. Like I said, the common ancestor is simple enough. It's the term used for any living organism that was the evolutionary fork in the road, essentially, between two species who are now separate. However, it is a relative term, since common ancestors can occur at any point in evolutionary history. For example, if you wanted to pinpoint the common ancestor for every living species on Earth, well, that organism did exist, billions of years ago, and it was a single-celled organism, so not too interesting. We're going to be avoiding stuff like that today. So don't expect me to make a common ancestor between all plant and all bird Pokemon. Today we're going to make common ancestors that are a bit more recent. The first link I wanted to explore was the idea of an ancient fish. There's plenty of fish in the Pokemon Sea, both metaphorically and literally, but I wanted to focus on one type of fish in particular. We see a bunch of fish-like Pokemon with complex designs, who have all evolved to develop specialized fins, jaws, tails, and flippers for swimming in the seas. But what fish Pokemon seem similar enough anatomically and have bodies that are more primitive? How about Tynamo and Barboach? These two Pokemon are both eel-like, with simple bodies similar to a hagfish or a lamprey, which are both two types of fish in real life that were some of the first fish to exist, not yet specialized for advanced locomotion. So what if we designed the common ancestor to simple-bodied fish Pokemon, with Tynamo and Barboach being the first direct descendants to this ancestral Pokemon, and the only two living descendants? Maybe it could be an electric ground type similar to Stunfisk, and it could live in shallow waters where it coats itself in mud to hide from predators, since it can't do much more than send a weak electrical jolt that it uses to zap tiny prey. That gives us Dregiel, the mudflat Pokemon. From dreg, a word for an earthy, muddy deposit, and eel. This tiny fish lived in muddy, shallow waters across the Pokemon world millions of years ago. Due to the scarce amount of rocky coves to hide in, it had to burrow in ocean sediment to hide from larger Pokemon, sending weak electric shocks using nerve lines on its body to shock microscopic prey. This Pokemon is nothing too impressive, but it was one of the first modern fish Pokemon, before more advanced shark-like species evolved into existence. It doesn't really have a jaw, just like its two descendants, so it couldn't bite or attack. Instead, it uses weak electricity to shock and then scoop up weak prey using that open mouth of its to filter feed. I would say that Dregiel would have lived in warmer waters. Not quite tropical, but warm and sunny enough that it could have turned sunlight into electricity with specialized organs. Eventually, a group of Dregiel would have migrated to colder waters of Unova, which had rockier coasts and cliffs, where it had to compensate for less direct sunlight and deeper waters by developing its electricity organ and losing the ground typing, eventually becoming the modern Tynamo family. Then, another group of it migrated to the warmer waters of Hoenn, where it had bigger fishy foes in the tropical seas, and it had to find shallow rivers and coastlines to hide in, developing those whiskers of theirs to become more aware of their surroundings. They also gained a water typing because as its anatomy became more specialized, it was able to incorporate its element into its attack style, thus becoming the modern Barboach. So there's Dregiel, the ancient extinct common ancestor of Tynamo, Barboach, and maybe some other fish Pokemon. Next, let's discuss carnivores. There's a ton of carnivore Pokemon species, ranging from cats, dogs, seals, weasels, bears, and much more. So I wanted to pick two of those somewhat closely related groups and explain how they evolved from a common ancestor. I chose to focus on the pinnipeds, which includes seals and walruses, and the mustelids, which includes otters, ferrets, badgers, and other rodent-like animals. These two groups are actually pretty well related in real life, and it's owed to a common ancestor. This was an early otter-like creature that lived millions of years ago, and it's thought to be the first link between land mammals like weasels and sea mammals like seals. Maybe we could turn that into a Pokemon that existed millions of years ago, and was a semi-aquatic mammalian species that lived in cold tundras, next to rivers and lakes. It probably developed webbed feet like an otter to swim, and had thick fur, along with sharp jaws for hunting, as it is a carnivore. So why don't we combine one mustelid Pokemon, Furret the Ferret, with one pinniped Pokemon, Dewgong the Seal. All of that gave us Pinnipedal, the webfoot Pokemon, from pinniped and pedal, a term indicating the use of feet. These large Pokemon roamed alpine forests and watersheds thousands of years ago. They were the first semi-aquatic mammalian Pokemon. They developed webbed feet perfectly adapted for catching prey in cold waters, and may have taught early humans how to fish. So these Pokemon are, just like Dregiel, relatively simple anatomically. That's because I tried to incorporate characteristics of two Pokemon that I think were some of the first modern mammal Pokemon, Furret and Dewgong. I also captured elements of both here, where Pinnipedal would be a creature that evolved from smaller woodland creatures, and it became a large enough predator that it grew a long body and it became one of the top predators in ancient versions of Kanto and Johto, back in the Pokemon equivalent to the Ice Age. I think the ones who lived in Kanto formed colonies further out into the deep bodies of water where they had less of a need for legs and hands. Eventually, all of their appendages turned into the flippers of Dewgong, since they needed to swim across vast distances as sea ice began to melt during the modern era, creating more open ocean environments for them. Thus, they became Dewgong. And the other group, which continued to stay in lakes and rivers on the coastline of ancient Johto, continued to grow in size, with their bodies becoming longer, their fur becoming thicker, and their webbed appendages eventually shrinking in size and disappearing, as they became ground mammals, thus becoming Furret. So with more advanced and specialized adaptations in both the normal and water-type directions, and two new species, unfortunately Pinnipedal had no more ecological niche, since it was halfway between aquatic and terrestrial. So it was probably hunted to extinction by early humans by the end of the Ice Age. Finally, let's look at the tree again to create one final Pokemon. There's an obvious branch off from general mammals when the primate order became a thing. Just like in real life, small ground mammals eventually became more advanced over time. They grew bigger brains, opposable thumbs, better eyesight, and they had long limbs to climb in trees and even craft tools. This was the point in which all monkeys and of course humans evolved. So I wanted to create something in that arena for this last Pokemon. I looked at all the monkey Pokemon, some of which seemed pretty advanced and had characteristics similar to humans. So at some point pretty recently, there was probably some common ancestor between humans and Pokemon. But I wanted to challenge myself and go back a little bit further to create one of the first primate Pokemon ever, the Proto-Chimp. That would be the first to evolve from ground mammals, and it would give rise to some of the more primitive but still extant primate Pokemon. I chose to create the common ancestor of Aipom and Darumaka. The reason for this link is because these two are vaguely monkey-inspired Pokemon, but neither of them have advanced digits on their hands or their feet. So this Pokemon that we're about to create was probably the first Pokemon that scientists discovered remains of and classified as a primate, since it stood upright and was relatively intelligent. But its body still lacked key characteristics of later monkey Pokemon. So all of that gave us Primojo, the Proto-Chimp Pokemon, from primate or prime, indicating that it's the first, and Mojo, which means energy. Scientists believe that these were the first Pokemon in the lineage of modern humans. They lived in dry savanna environments and they foraged for berries using their prehensile tails. In lieu of building tools like modern chimp Pokemon, they developed fire powers from the sunlight to ward off predators. So these Pokemon did lack a lot of characteristics of modern monkeys. They didn't really possess hands or feet capable of climbing trees, so they preferred hot, flat environments, where they could roam around in packs in the plains, and they used their primitive versions of Aipom tails to survive. I would say that a group of these Pokemon stayed in these flat environments, and they lost their tails entirely since they weren't really necessary. Instead, they grew organs that could harness the sunlight into fire power similar to modern Darumaka. And then another group of Primojo left these hot environments and went to cooler, wetter jungles, where they developed their tails to climb up trees and they formed nests, similar to modern Aipoms. Eventually, groups of Pokemon like Aipom would go on to become the first modern monkeys that we know today, like Infernape, the Simmies, Oranguru, and of course modern humans, once their hands and their feet evolved and their brains got bigger. And though Primojo may be extinct now, scientists recognize that they're one of the most important Pokemon species to ever exist. Because without them, humans wouldn't exist either. So those are 3 Pokemon that I think are pretty good examples of possible common ancestors to Pokemon that we know and love today. I hope you've enjoyed this combination theory art video, because I'd love to continue this series alongside my other videos. Let me know 2 Pokemon that you'd like to see a link between next. Also, if you like my art videos, check out my Arova region playlist, where I designed unique Pokemon and a brand new region based on California. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time for more content.